Some stories don't begin with heroes or miracles. They begin with a tired woman, a child clinging to hope, and a loyal dog who senses danger long before anyone else. On a forgotten mountain road, something happened that would uncover an old family secret and change the fate of an entire town. But it all started with one strange letter, and a warning only the dog seemed to understand. Before we begin, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Rain drifted lightly across the morning, a thin silver veil settling over the edge of the city. Olivia Bennett, 40 years old, walked slowly along the cracked sidewalk, with her daughter close beside her. Her frame was lean from years of moving place to place, and the worn olive parka clung to her shoulders as if trying to keep her warm a little longer. Emily, 10 and quiet, held a frayed blue hoodie tight around her small body. And behind them came Ranger, a 5-year-old German shepherd with a dark sable coat, his steps steady, his eyes scanning every corner the way dogs do when they know the world is not always kind. They had slept the night behind an abandoned storefront, sheltered only by cardboard and a low awning. Olivia rose before sunrise, her breath turning pale in the cold, and wondered how many more mornings her daughter would wake this way. She carried that thought the way older men carry old injuries, quietly, without complaint, but always feeling it. When the officer from the courthouse walked into the alley, a woman in a county jacket, Olivia first stepped in front of Emily, out of habit, out of fear. But the woman's voice was gentle, worn from long days, and her hands did not carry the hardness of enforcement. She held a single letter. "Olivia Bennett?" she asked, her tone unsure, as though she did not expect anyone to answer. Olivia nodded. The woman explained what she could. A relative had passed away. Margaret Holloway, a woman Olivia had not seen since she was 17. And there was a house, a worn wooden house on the Blue Ridge, left in Olivia's name. The officer's face softened when she offered her condolences, and something moved, quietly, behind Olivia's ribs. It was not joy. It was not grief. It was the strange heaviness of being remembered by someone she thought had forgotten her long ago. Ranger growled once, low and brief, not at the woman, but at the noise of footsteps somewhere behind the alley. Olivia calmed him with a touch on his collar. Ranger had learned to distrust the world long before Olivia understood why. When the officer left, Olivia unfolded the letter again. Rain dotted the edges. Emily leaned in, her breath small and warm. The words were simple. "The property is yours." Olivia read them twice, then a third time, feeling their weight settle into her like a slow dawn. She had no savings, no steady job, no roof to promise her daughter. But she had this, an unexpected doorway back into a life she once walked away from. Ranger nudged her hand, sensing the shift in her breathing. His dark eyes held something steady, something that reminded her of the mountain air she hadn't tasted in decades. Perhaps dogs remember places even when people forget. She made the decision quietly, with the tired calm of someone too worn to fear change anymore. "We're going," she whispered. Emily looked up, hopeful and frightened at once. "Up to the mountains?" "Yes," Olivia said. "It's time to go home, whatever home means now." Ranger barked once, soft but certain, as if agreeing. The bus station was a long walk. Olivia carried their bags, 2 bundles of clothes, some canned food, a blanket too thin for winter. Emily held Ranger's collar as the city swelled and receded around them. On the bus, the windows fogged with the warmth of passengers pressed close together. Olivia kept her eyes on the blurred world outside, the gray streets giving way to long stretches of meadow. She felt the hum of the engine, steady and patient, like a heartbeat trying to guide her forward. Ranger sat at her feet, ears raised, watching every movement in the aisles. Each time a stranger passed too near Emily, he shifted, alert. Olivia placed a hand on his back, grateful for a loyalty she had done little to earn. As the bus climbed higher into the foothills, the air turned colder, cleaner. Olivia thought about Margaret, about the years between them, about the letter written by a hand now gone. She did not know what waited for them on that mountain, but for the first time in a long while, the road ahead felt less like running and more like returning. And Ranger, steady as the rain easing outside the bus window, kept watch over them until the hills rose into view. Fog settled over the ridge like an old blanket, soft and slow, carrying the faint smell of wet pine. Olivia Bennet stepped through the tall grass with Emily close behind her. The house appeared as a silhouette first, a sagging frame against the pale morning. Years of storms had bowed its roof, and the porch leaned the way tired people do when no one is watching. Olivia felt something tight in her chest loosen and then return, unsure if it was memory or regret. Ranger walked ahead, nose low, ears high, reading the world with the careful patience only a German shepherd possesses. His coat, dark and gold in the faint light, moved with each alert breath. Inside, the air held the stillness of a place waiting too long for a voice. Dust lay on the old counters. A single chair rested in the corner, its wooden back worn by the weight of someone who once sat there every evening. Olivia picked up a folded scrap of paper left on the table. Her hands shook slightly as she opened it. The handwriting was thin, hurried. "If you are reading this, you have survived enough to return. The mountain still has something to say to you." She stood there for a moment, letting the words settle into her, like stones dropped into water. Emily watched silently, unsure whether to speak. Outside, Ranger let out a short bark, more warning than sound, before circling the doorway again, restless. Night fell early on the mountain. The darkness felt different here, thicker, but not unfamiliar. Olivia built a small fire in the old stove, coaxing the flame to life with hands that remembered chores from a childhood she seldom spoke about. Emily lay curled in her blanket near the warm iron body of the stove, her breath slow and even. Ranger lay beside her, though his eyes never fully closed. Every few minutes he lifted his head, listening. Olivia could hear it too, the low hum of wind through broken boards, the soft shift of pine branches brushing the outer wall. But Ranger heard something more. Sometime near midnight, he stood abruptly and moved toward the door. His tail lowered, his ears stiffened. Olivia felt the air change. She rose quietly and stepped beside him. The floorboards creaked under her weight. Ranger's breathing deepened, steady and urgent. When she pushed the door open just enough to look outside, she saw nothing at first. Only the yard drenched in moonlight and the fog rolling close to the porch steps. Then she noticed the prints, fresh, deep, shaped by boots heavier than her own, leading toward the tree line. Her breath caught. She closed the door, easing the latch into place. Ranger pressed against her leg, warm and steady, as if reminding her she was not facing the night alone. She ran her hand along his back, grounding herself with the familiar strength beneath his fur. "It's all right," she whispered, though the words felt more like a wish. Ranger stayed beside the door for a long time, guarding, watching, his eyes glowing faintly in the firelight. Olivia lay awake beside Emily, listening to the house breathe around them. She thought of Margaret, of the old woman's stubbornness, her silence, her warnings no one had taken seriously. Perhaps the mountain had always held more truth than she knew. Perhaps this house, in all its wear and quiet ache, was still trying to speak. When dawn came, thin and gray, Olivia stepped outside. Ranger followed, nose to the earth. The prints were still there, softened by dew, but undeniable. She felt no anger, only the slow rise of an old understanding, the kind that comes when life reminds you it hasn't finished testing you yet. She straightened, breathed the cool air deep, and let the mountains settle in her bones. Behind her, Ranger lifted his head toward the trees, watching over her with the solemn patience of something that had already decided to stay. And for the first time in years, Olivia felt less alone. A thin morning mist clung to the trees, drifting like breath from something old and unseen. Olivia Bennett stepped outside with careful feet, the cold earth soft beneath her boots. She had slept little. The house had creaked through the night, an orchestra of old wood shifting against wind. Emily still rested inside, curled beneath a borrowed blanket. But Ranger was awake, his dark coat catching the first pale light of dawn. He pressed his nose to Olivia's coat pocket, pawing once, then again, more insistent this time. She frowned and reached into the pocket, pulling out the folded note she had read the night before. The paper felt different in her hands now, heavier, as if holding more than simple ink. When she turned it over, she noticed faint lettering on the back, almost erased by time and weather. Slowly, with the gentleness of someone handling a wound, she lifted it toward the light. The message revealed itself, grain by grain. If Ranger still remembers the way, follow him. Olivia's breath left her in a soft cloud. She looked down at the German shepherd, at the steady eyes that had guarded her through too many uncertain nights. She whispered, "Show me, boy." Ranger turned without hesitation, moving toward the line of trees as if he had been waiting for permission. The forest held a quiet older than memory. Pines rose like pillars, their needles whispering above her head. Olivia walked behind Ranger, one hand resting lightly on Emily's shoulder as the girl stepped carefully around fallen logs. Emily said little, but her eyes wandered, curious, unsure, drawn to the hush of the woods. Ranger slowed near a decaying stump, its heartwood dark from years of rain. He pawed the soil gently, then dug with more purpose, sending roots and damp earth aside. Olivia knelt beside him. Something pale glimmered beneath the dirt. She brushed it clean. A small plastic sleeve emerged, clouded with age. Inside, a handwritten note, Margaret's script, unmistakable. "If I am gone, give this to the one who can read it. Tom Walker will understand." Olivia held the letter close, letting her thumb trace the ink. Her aunt had lived alone for years. No one had believed her warnings. Yet here was proof of something she feared, hidden with the care of someone who loved quietly and worried deeply. Ranger barked once, sharp and focused, then lifted his nose to the wind. He moved again, guiding them deeper along a narrow path. Olivia followed, heart pulling in two directions, toward the truth and toward all the things she had avoided for years. The path opened into a small clearing. There, wedged into the slope of the mountain, stood a stone shed. Its door hung crooked, bound by rusted hinges. A chain lay broken on the ground as if snapped long ago. Inside, the air was thick with dust and forgotten intent. Wooden crates lined the walls, some cracked, some still sealed. The symbols on them were faded, but Olivia recognized enough of them to feel the weight in her stomach. Ranger stayed close, sniffing the edges of each crate, tail stiff. Emily stood at the doorway, hands gripping her sleeves, her breath trembling in the cold. Olivia pried open one crate with a piece of fallen metal. It groaned as if resisting. Inside lay the cylindrical samples, rock cores, cut smooth, marked with coordinates. She turned one in her palm. Margaret had been right. The company had drilled here, quietly, illegally. Then Ranger froze. His body stiffened, his ears lifted. A low growl rose from his chest, slow, warning, ancient. Olivia felt every muscle in her spine tighten. She looked toward the trees outside the shed. A shadow shifted. Not wind, not an animal. Someone was out there, watching, waiting. She placed the core back into the crate, lifted Emily into her arms, and whispered to Ranger, "Let's go." The dog stepped ahead, guarding the path, never once looking away from the line of trees. They walked back toward the house in silence. And though fear pressed close, Olivia felt something else too, a conviction taking shape, steady and undeniable. The mountain wanted the truth uncovered. Ranger had always known. A cold wind drifted down the mountain road, carrying the faint scent of iron and fallen leaves. Olivia Bennett held the wrapped core sample close to her chest as she walked toward the small town below. Emily walked beside her, quiet beneath her blue hoodie, and Ranger kept to their heels, each step measured and alert. The morning light was thin, almost reluctant. Olivia felt the same way. She had spent most of her life walking away from difficult truths. Now she carried one in her hands. The library sat near the town square, a modest brick building softened by time. Inside, dust floated in warm shafts of light. At a corner table sat Tom Walker, the retired geologist Margaret had once spoken of. Tom was in his early 60s, with graying hair brushed back and a short beard that gave him the look of a man who had weathered many winters. He wore a faded flannel shirt and held reading glasses loosely between his fingers. When Olivia approached, he lifted his eyes, pale, steady, touched by years of patience. "What can I do for you?" he asked, his voice low, shaped by mountain air and long days spent alone with maps. Olivia unwrapped the core sample and placed it gently in front of him. Tom studied it with a seriousness that felt almost like reverence. He turned the cylinder slowly under the window light. Then he nodded, once, heavy. "This came from deep," he murmured, "and not from where they claimed." Olivia handed him Margaret's hidden note. Tom read it, his brow tightening. "She tried to warn people," he said quietly. "No one listened. Maybe they didn't want to." He pulled out an old chart, traced the engraved coordinates with a weathered finger. They drilled under her land for lithium. High grade, worth a fortune. Olivia felt both anger and sorrow moving through her. Anger for the lies, sorrow for Margaret's loneliness. Ranger pressed his head against Olivia's hand, grounding her. Tom encouraged her to meet someone who could help. A local attorney, young enough to still believe in justice, but old enough to understand its cost. Anna Morales greeted them in a small office above the hardware store, a woman in her late 30s with dark hair tied neatly at the nape of her neck. Her navy blazer looked worn at the elbows, and her eyes carried the tired sharpness of someone who worked too hard because no one else would. She listened without interruption as Olivia spoke. She read Margaret's note twice. She examined the core sample with care. When Anna finally leaned back, she said, "They can't hide this, not if you're willing to stand up to them." Her voice was calm, unwavering. Olivia had not heard such conviction directed at her in years. It felt like being handed a lifeline. Emily watched Anna with wide, trusting eyes. Ranger lay at Olivia's feet, ears twitching at every noise from the street outside. Later, as they walked home up the winding mountain road, the afternoon shadows grew long. Ranger froze suddenly. His body stiffened. A low growl formed in his throat, deep, warning. Olivia followed his gaze. A man leaned against a dark SUV parked at the bend, his coat black, his face clean-shaven, his posture too relaxed to be honest. "Ms. Bennett?" he said with a practiced smile. His voice was smooth, shaped by boardrooms rather than back roads. "Daniel Crest. I represent Rockwell Mining. I hear you found something that belongs to us." Olivia said nothing. Ranger stepped forward, placing himself between her and the stranger, hackles raised. Crest continued, lowering his voice. "We can make this simple. A generous offer, enough to solve your situation." His eyes flicked to Emily, and the meaning settled heavy in the air. "No," Olivia said softly. Ranger growled louder, and Crest took a careful step back. "You're making a mistake," he warned. But Olivia felt something steady inside her, something that had been quiet too long. "I don't think I am," she replied. Crest got into the SUV and drove away, leaving dust rising behind him. Olivia knelt beside Ranger, resting her hand on his warm fur. Emily slipped her small hand into hers, and for the first time, Olivia believed the truth was worth fighting for. Evening light pooled gently across the valley, a soft amber glow settling over the old porch, like a blessing. For weeks the mountain had carried a tension Olivia Bennett could feel in her bones. Men she didn't know began appearing along the road, standing too still, asking too little. Their trucks idled near the bend, engines humming like distant warnings. Every night, Ranger lay across the doorway, his dark coat rising and falling with slow, vigilant breaths. Olivia would wake to the sound of him shifting, listening, guarding. She often placed a hand on his back, feeling the steady warmth of a creature who asked for nothing but gave everything. The legal battle moved slowly at first, each hearing draining what little strength she had. Yet the truth, once spoken aloud, carried a weight of its own. The core samples gleamed under courtroom lights. Margaret's hidden note, dug up from the forest floor by Ranger's patient pause, became a turning point. The judge studied it with quiet gravity, recognizing the dates, the claim boundaries, the deception. Tom Walker testified with a calm, unwavering voice, his sighs heavy with years of regret. Attorney Anna Morales stood firm beside Olivia, her eyes sharp, her blazer worn but dignified. Rockwell's lawyers faltered, their confidence thinning as evidence piled high like fallen timber. By the third week, Rockwell folded. Fear replaces arrogance in subtle ways, shorter sentences, quieter tones, hurried meetings behind closed doors. They offered a settlement larger than anything Olivia had imagined, enough to give Emily security, enough to protect the land. And most important to Olivia, she was granted the right to speak publicly about what had been done. Silence would not be part of the deal. She thought of Margaret then, alone on this mountain, unheard. Olivia signed with steady hands, feeling as though she were signing not only for herself, but for the woman who had trusted the mountain more than people. Ranger stood beside her, tail lowered, gaze solemn. Life changed with surprising gentleness after that. The house was repaired, new beams, solid floors, windows that caught the morning sun. A fenced yard stretched wide, giving Ranger space to run with the steady joy of a dog finally released from vigilance. The town began calling him the Mountain Guardian, a name spoken with affection, sometimes awe. Emily giggled each time she heard it, hugging Ranger around the neck until his ears twitched in mock annoyance. At the museum dedication for Margaret Holloway, the crowd gathered in warm coats. The building was small but filled with quiet respect. At the center of the main room, displayed behind glass, lay the weathered scrap of paper Ranger had unearthed. Beneath it, a plaque read, "She kept the truth when no one wanted it." During the ceremony, Olivia stood beside Emily, listening to the speeches. Ranger sat at her feet, his head tilted in that earnest way only German shepherds manage. When Margaret's name was spoken, Ranger rose, walked to Olivia, and rested his head gently against her leg. She placed her hand on him, feeling the weight of gratitude, the ache of closure, the quiet promise of a life rebuilt. That evening, when the mountain wind grew colder, Emily curled beside Ranger on the porch steps. "If it weren't for him," she whispered, "we never would have found Aunt Margaret's secret." Olivia knelt next to her, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face. "That's true," she said softly. "Ranger brought us home." The dog settled on the wooden porch, watching the shadows stretch across the trees. His breaths were slow, peaceful. The house behind him glowed with new light, and the mountain at last felt like it had exhaled. In stories like Olivia's, we're reminded that even in our later years, through sickness, loneliness, or the long, quiet hours, hope still finds its way back to us. Many of us know the weight of empty rooms, fading strength, and memories that visit in the night. But God has not forgotten you. Your life still carries purpose, tenderness, and light. If this story touched your heart, please share it, leave a comment, and subscribe so more souls can feel less alone. May the Lord watch over you, strengthen your spirit, and bless every day you are given. You are not forgotten.